are coming on the air with Alex Murdaugh stepping down from the stand just in the last couple of minutes after 2 days of testimony. The story that he's telling the jury, even suggesting who he thinks may have killed his wife and son. We'll play all those testy exchanges he had with prosecutors today on the stand. Plus, we are live in snowy, not sunny, California, as millions are under a super rare blizzard warning across the state, with flakes even hitting the Hollywood sign. And in the original, we are going to Jackson, Mississippi, where a new bill could completely upend the city's justice system. Plus the backstory. We are pulling back the curtain on a new NBC podcast. What our producer learned from his years-long journey getting exclusive letters for a man behind bars for a crime he says he did not commit. And can the Oscars stop another slap, or at least the fallout? Details on their new so-called, quote-unquote, crisis team later on in the show. Hey, everybody, I'm Yasmin, in for Hallie. Good to see you today. Court is done for the day. Alex Murdaugh is finally off the stand after more than 12 hours of testimony over 2 days, and soon it is up to a jury. Did he or did he not murder his wife and son back in June of 2021? And then the state is not holding back in 2 days of cross-examination. They're directly accusing the disbarred South Carolina lawyer of fudging the timeline, of being crystal clear about a ton of details, but not around the key moments when the attacks allegedly happened. Here's some of his response.
I never manufactured any alibi in any way, shape, or form because I did not and would not hurt my wife and my child.
So a big reason why the prosecution's accusing Murdock of being a liar is, well, Murdock himself has admitted many times that, in fact, he has lied. You're looking right now at a short list of those lies, mostly about the other crimes that he's accused of, like the nearly 100 financial charges that he faces, but also about making misleading statements to police and messing up some key details about the timeline on the day of those killings back in 2021. And then today, prosecutors went minute by minute looking to discredit what they called Murdock's new story. Here's some of how that went down.
You hadn't decided to lie right there, correct?
I don't believe so.
You read that as, oh, I should lie. Was that the moment you decided to lie to mean old Dave Owen?
Everything about me not going to the kennel was a lie.
And you're able to just do that just so easily and so convincingly and so naturally, don't you?
I mean, that's not for me to judge.
That's true.
And then just like yesterday, Murdock teared up hearing about the details of Maggie and Paul's bodies, including this moment where the prosecutors challenge him about exactly what he told police when he checked the bodies and then subsequently called 911. Watch this.
You're saying you didn't say that to law enforcement?
I don't know what I said to law enforcement, Mr. Waters, but I can tell you this. When I pulled up and I saw Mags and Paul, I jumped out of that car. I know that I went back to my car and I called 911 as quickly as I could.
All right, some really tense moments there, emotional moments as well. I want to bring in Ellison, Barber, Danny Savalas, who are both on set with me. Today was quite a day for Cross, to say the least, right? And I think one of the most, Ellison, I'll go to you first on this, interesting moments was kind of walking us through really that timeline. The prosecution tried to do just that. And then there was this moment, right, in which Alex Murdaugh tried to present the killer, the person he feels as if may have killed his wife and son. And the prosecution really kind of honed in on that and turned it around. Walk us through it.
Yeah, that was the moment that for me, I immediately pulled out a pen and wrote down verbatim what they said, because it felt like such an explosive moment. And Danny and I were talking earlier, as someone who has spent some time down there in Walterboro covering this and has just followed this throughout the trial, I have had moments, even feeling like I'm so ingrained in this, of feeling overwhelmed by what the prosecution is laying out, particularly when it relates to financial crimes. And I think if I feel that way, jurors must as well. That was a moment where it felt like you couldn't misunderstand what they were saying, and it just felt like a really big moment. What you had happen was you had Alex Murdaugh suggest that he had mentioned on the night of the murders that maybe there was something involved here with the boat crash of 2019. And he said, I believed then that something to do with the boat crash, it was related to that.
Boat crash in which a woman lost her life.
Correct.
A young girl lost his life.
And he said, yeah, I believed that then. I still believe that now.
Yeah.
And then the prosecution is like, okay, but do you think anyone who was on the boat did it? And he's like, no. And then they're like, okay, well, so you think someone just showed up at this property knowing Maggie and Paul were going to be there when they weren't supposed to be there, knowing that you weren't going to be there for about 10 minutes, and then also came without a weapon and assumed, hey, they probably have ammo and weapons on their property. I'll just use that. Then got away by taking the same route you did and threw Maggie's phone along that course. And he said, you're expecting the jury to believe that? And Alex's response was, there are a lot of factors you laid out there, some of which I agree with, but not all. And that felt like a huge moment to me. And I don't know about Danny as the real lawyer in the room, but it felt like something that I think you just had to lean in and just listen, because it was like, wait, you kind of compacted everything that I felt like we'd heard bits of in one moment.
And I felt like the use of the word vigilante, Danny, was really important for the prosecution's perspective, right? Because it seemed as if he was kind of just pulling this out of nowhere, right? He talked about vigilante. He talked about social media, right? Because you heard Alex Murdaugh kind of talk about how social media, people on social media really were attacking his son, his young son at the time, after that boat crash. And it seemed as if the prosecution really honed on in this word vigilante to discredit anything that he was saying on that stand in that very moment.
As is often the case, an entire day of testimony comes down to just a few moments, and Ellison seized on what I believe was the most important moment of today, in a day that was otherwise kind of mundane, even a little boring at times, and I'll explain why. But she's absolutely right. Murdock, when given the chance, comes up with what can only sound like a cockamamie theory about who this third party might have been. Now, keep in mind, the defense hasn't introduced any actual evidence of this third party. So now you have Murdock coming in and suggesting that there's some 5-foot-tall vigilante, some John Wick, who is not related to the people in the boat, but he is sympathetic to them. He's willing to put his entire life on the line and go out and murder two perfect strangers, and not just Paul, but his innocent mother, and he happens to know. I mean, I'm not going to go through. Ellison hit every point there. It's not plausible, and the prosecution seized on that. Because otherwise today, I think the prosecution they over-hammered the issue of Murdock being a liar. Did you lie? Yes, I did. Are you a liar? Yes, I am. Are your pants on fire? Yes, they are. The guy was a liar. We get it.
But here's the thing, though, and this is the fault that I see in the prosecution's kind of line of questioning and what they're presenting, which is just because he is a liar, just because he stole millions and millions of dollars, does not necessarily make him a murderer.
Okay, so my response to that is that the prosecution made this bed and now they have to sleep in it. They wanted to introduce the evidence of his financial crimes, to dump on Murdock and build a theory of motive that I think is unpalatable to a lot of people. That motive being, and by the way, it's what we're all talking about. And we shouldn't be. It doesn't make sense. And if it doesn't make sense to you, it probably doesn't make sense to one of those jurors. And they're going to argue about that in the jury room. Think about it this way. What if they never introduced that evidence? Now they have a much cleaner case. There's no evidence anyone else was ever at that property. The person who was at that property had an opiate addiction, and when they arrived, he had a firearm. You lay that out to the jury. Yes, it's circumstantial, but circumstantial evidence is often more powerful than eyewitness testimony, than direct evidence.
Even again, I'm going to keep talking about this vigilante thing because I thought it was really fascinating. The defense team did not even present another person that may have pulled this off, that may have murdered both Alex Murdaugh's wife and son, and yet he did on the stand, or he tried to do that himself on the stand. Was that even a smart move on his part, or was that him overstepping because he's a lawyer?
Okay, this is what I think. And look, criminal defense attorneys know a lot of people like this. They're often defendants. They think they can explain their way out of anything. If I just get a chance to talk to people, I can have an answer for everything. And in my mind, that seemed like Murdock going for broke, thinking, oh, I've been successful all my life in a courtroom. I can explain it to this jury. And that theory doesn't have any basis. Look, the defense has two choices. They can't be in the middle about this. They either sit back and say, well, this was a shoddy investigation. They haven't proven their case beyond a reasonable doubt. You can do that. That's fine. You don't have to prove anything. If you're going to go with a third-party theory, you better have an actual third party, not some vague costume vigilante who happens to be 5 feet tall and happens to know when Murdock leaves the property and happens to know that the victims are down by the kennel. All of that is pretty hard to buy. So now they've done a halfway third-party theory, and it's not going to fly. At least it shouldn't fly. If you have that, go for it. Introduce, point at an empty chair and say, that's the guy that did it, or say nothing. Don't go for that, because the jury isn't going to buy a half story about some guy out there who doesn't exist.
Ellison, finally, just to you, we saw the defense redirect here towards the very end of the day. Take us through that. Why?
Yeah, and I think we can play a little bit of it so people can just hear for themselves. But really, they seem to take the same approach that they took when he first took the stand, which is to directly look at him and say, did you murder them? And he again said, I would never, ever hurt them. Listen.
Do we have that sound, guys?
Might not.
If I was under the pressure that they're talking about here, I can promise you I would hurt myself before I would hurt one of them. Without a doubt.
And look, what the prosecution keeps going back to is that Snapchat kennel video. They're saying there was one person who said they were not there at the time of the murders, who has since, after 6 people came through here and testified and said, yeah, we hear his voice on that video. And then his thing that he said today was, I have been cooperative throughout this investigation, except on telling them about the kennel. And the prosecution, the state said, the most important thing, that you were there minutes before they were murdered based on the state's timeline, and you didn't mention it until now.
Until you got caught.
Right.
Ellison, Barber, Danny Savalas. More to come, guys, on this. Thank you guys both so much. Appreciate it. All right, so right now, everybody, we're talking weather, right? Parts of Southern California are under a very rare blizzard warning as a winter storm slams the state. And by rare, we mean the first or second time ever for some of these counties. On top of that, over 20 million people under flood watches because of heavy rain, and almost 25 million under wind alerts. Snow is covering places you wouldn't expect. Look at this. At a winery up in Northern California, literally, someone's snowboarding through it. And then here, snow near the Hollywood sign in what should be sunny Los Angeles. For the roads, it's not a good sign. Many are covered in ice and snow as well. Look at this semi-truck having to get towed out after slipping off the road. Real mayhem there in California right now. Over 100,000 people are without power. And from that major storm that just left the Midwest, still around 700,000 people are in the dark. Want to bring in Dana Griffin, who's standing by for us in Los Angeles. This is not weather folks in Los Angeles are used to dealing with. Things are really kind of up in arms there. And when you're looking at some of those snowy pictures, the Hollywood sign having snow around it, something we've never really seen before. What are folks there facing right now?
I mean, Yasmin, you described it perfectly. This type of weather is very rare. Up in the mountains, those blizzard-like conditions left whiteout conditions for drivers. And we've seen spin-out. Some highways actually had to be closed down because it's just not safe. Here in Los Angeles, I'm not sure if it's coming across on screen, but it is raining nonstop, leaving streets just outside of our NBC News building partially flooded. And that will be a major concern even as the storm moves out of the region, because we're getting so much in a short period of time. And snow melt could add to the flooding issue here. Yasmin?
Talk about the major flooding as well, because when you think about California, right, when you have these kind of massive storms, if it's a little bit of snow or rain, we're also looking at the potential of mudslides here.
Yeah, that is a big concern that many are going to be watching. And a lot of people actually did not go to work today. A lot of people worked from home just so that they wouldn't get stuck out in this weather. And local officials have been advising people to stay home, avoid the roads if you absolutely have to. You know, we've seen this time and time again, even with the storm that happened last month, back in January, earlier this year. You know, the rain, it causes those mudslides, and it's very, very dangerous, Yasmin.
Power outages. Northern California already seeing a couple 100,000 folks without power out there. Then you got Michigan, right? The storm kind of barreled through there, leaving people without power. Where are we with this?
You're right. Much of the Midwest is still recovering from that major winter storm that hit this week. Snow, ice, and wind knocked out power to nearly 1 million people. I just checked that number of power outages has now dropped down to about 700,000. Most of those outages happened in Michigan, where unfortunately a volunteer firefighter was killed when a tree brought down a high voltage line. And Yasmin, some of those power outages are expected to last throughout the weekend.
All right, Dana, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, any moment now, everybody, the president's set to leave the White House after a day of meetings with G7 leaders and Ukrainian President Zelensky. The meeting is taking place on a somber anniversary, 1 year since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. They released a statement saying they're committed to intensifying diplomatic, financial, military support for Ukraine. And this is coming as we start a second year of war with tensions between Russia and the West somehow even higher than when the conflict first began after Russian President Vladimir Putin suspended that nuclear New START treaty, and possibly even more tensions. Today, the feds announced they seized $75 million in assets from a Russian oligarch, including the Fisher Island, Florida estate that you see here. NBC's Richard Engel has been following this conflict from the very start and joins us now from Ukraine. Richard, as always, it is fantastic to talk to you. In the last year, we have seen the West go from sending small arms and defensive weapons to sending battle tanks, sophisticated air defense systems, and other cutting-edge technology. How do you think this changes the game right now and the outlook, really, for the Ukrainian military going forward?
Well, the weapons are arriving, and the weapons are being used, and the weapons have made a tremendous difference. Had early on in the war, anti-tank weapons, javelins not been sent into this country, it is very possible that Ukrainian forces wouldn't have been able to defend the capital, Kyiv. Now they are waiting for more battle tanks so that they can launch a new offensive. So the weapons have been incredibly important. Ukrainians want to defend their country. It is not that they lack the resolve. They have tremendous resolve. They have a will to fight. They are in this for whatever it takes, for as long as it takes. But they want this war to end quickly, because every day that it goes on, more and more of Ukraine is destroyed. The longer refugees have to stay outside of this country. So the Ukrainians want the weapons so that they can end the war more quickly and save more of their country before it gets destroyed. So the weapons have been, to answer your question, fundamental for the Ukrainians, but they just want more, bigger, heavier weapons to come sooner before there's not much of this country left to defend.
Richard, and then there's China, right? Really the elephant in the room. Are they not supplying Moscow with weapons to continue to fight this war? We know President Xi certainly has a vested interest in what Putin is trying to do, considering his own interests in Taiwan and what he believes is China's right in Taiwan. As we look at China and their influence over Moscow and what they continue to do with Moscow. Even today, they're rolling out what they're calling this peace plan for the conflict. What does this plan, Richard, entail, and the worry right now with China's involvement?
So Russia, like Ukraine, is running low on ammunition. This is a conventional war. In many ways, it's been described as a World War I style conflict. And that's not completely wrong, that you have trenches on both sides. You have two armies in uniforms trading artillery, and that depletes ammunition stockpiles. And the West is struggling to get ammunition to this country because a lot of the ammunition that Ukraine uses is Soviet-era ammunition, and they only have what they have, and they're certainly not getting any new equipment and new weapons from Russia. So the new weapons coming online will help the Ukrainians keep that going. But while Russia is also has dwindled stockpiles, the big concern is that China, which has an enormous manufacturing capacity, could come in and really bolster Russia's ability to wage this war, and it could be, frankly, a devastating game changer if China came in a major way to arm Russia.
Here's the thing, Richard, as we look back over the last year and then look ahead, right, to year two of this war. In the early days of this war, there were predictions that the Russian military could overtake the capital city of Ukraine within days. That did not happen. In fact, really the opposite. Some would say and analyze that the opposite has, in fact, happened. Is there a real possibility now, as we look ahead to year 2 of this conflict, that the Ukrainian military could, in fact, overtake the Russian military, considering kind of the disorganization of it all and how we have seen this war play out over the last year?
Well, that's certainly what Ukrainians want to do, and it is what they are planning to do, and they will tell you that openly. They are waiting for more tanks to arrive, the Abrams tanks, more Leopard tanks. 4 arrived today, more are going to be coming, and they want to take this fight in the next several months to the Russians. Russian forces currently control about 20% of Ukraine. And you're right, Russian troops were widely anticipated to take over the country, take over the capital, but Ukrainians, with the weapons that they were given and the will that they had to fight, pushed the Russians back almost to the borders and pushed them back to this 20% of Ukraine that they still hold, the frontline areas. And it's a roughly 800-mile strip of territory that runs from down south, where I am, all the way up to the east and the northeast. And the Ukrainians want to attack that territory, break up the Russian lines, and they are waiting for the heavy weapons in order to do that. And President Zelensky, on this occasion, just today, said that if those weapons come, he has no doubt that Ukraine can win this war this year. Let's take a listen.
When you hear the shooting and you hear the explosions, what do? Do you cover your ears? Do you think about something else?
I close my ears and lay in bed like this, she says. I close my eyes and go under the blanket to protect myself in case there's shrapnel. Sometimes I go under the bed.
Well, that obviously was not President Zelensky. That was a girl who I met in a school. And one thing we haven't talked about, Yasmin, and we were going to, which is why that clip was primed and ready, was to talk about the impact on average families in this country. Yeah. So many families are living as refugees. 13 million people have been displaced from their homes. Most children are not going to school. Oddly enough, it's only in really some of the most devastated areas where children, the few children who are still there, are gathering together and going in schools in hiding. That school where we were just, that the clip you just showed, the teacher didn't want us to show the location of the schoolhouse. We could only film on the inside. She didn't want us to show the exterior out of concern that if the Russians knew where it was, she thought that they would target it. So this has had a devastating impact on this country, on families in this country, and on children.
Incredibly important for us to keep the focus on the impact this has had on average Ukrainians every single day, and often how the world really has underestimated Ukrainians throughout this entire conflict, and really underestimated the Ukrainian president as well, as you referred to Ukrainian President Zelensky in the early hours of this war, and what he's really been able to pull off throughout the last year in garnering global support throughout this entire conflict. Richard Engel for us, as always, my friend, we appreciate you. Thank you. Quick programming note, everybody. You can catch more of Richard's reporting tonight. His special On Assignment with Richard Engel will air at 10 p.m. Eastern on MSNBC and streaming on Peacock as well. Right now, we're waiting to hear from a federal judge in Texas who is set to make what some say is the biggest ruling on abortion access since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. The suit filed by a group of anti-abortion doctors is trying to get the FDA to pull a pill that is used by women to terminate pregnancies off the market. If the judge agrees, the ruling would block access to the drug in every single state. It is called mifepristone and is used as part of a 2-pill regimen. Take a listen to what the vice president had to say about it only a few hours ago.
There is an attack that has been placed against the ability of doctors to prescribe and for people to receive medication.
So abortion rights advocates say the decision could have devastating consequences. Dasha Burns is outside the courthouse for us in Amarillo, Texas, and joining us now. Dasha, as always, it's great to talk to you. The group that's challenging the FDA actually says this drug, mifepristone, it's not safe. What do we know about it and about this argument they're making?
Yeah, Yasmin, they say it's not safe, and they say that the FDA didn't adequately evaluate its safety when they approved the drug back in 2000. So a little bit of historical context here. In 2000, the FDA approved the drug mifepristone, taken alongside the drug misoprostol, as part of a 2-drug regimen for abortion. Now it's become the most common abortion method in the United States. And Yasmin, since 2000, more than 5 million women have taken these drugs together to terminate pregnancies, and 28 deaths have been reported in association with the drug. In a court brief, the country's leading group of OBGYNs say mifepristone is exceedingly safe and effective, and called the lawsuit ideological, not scientific. We also reached out to the FDA, who told us that it doesn't comment on ongoing litigation, but in a court filing, it claims that the lawsuit is unsupported by evidence. And as we've talked to providers who are using this drug, who are prescribing this drug, they say that they have prescribed and seen many patients take this drug safely, and they say it's going to, as you said, have devastating impacts nationwide on abortion access if the judge in this case does rule in favor of the plaintiffs.
Dasha Burns for us. As always, Dasha, we thank you. All right, President Biden is close to officially announcing his 2024 re-election run. Who says? His wife says. First Lady Dr. Jill Biden being ever so blunt in an exclusive interview with the Associated Press on a trip to Kenya.
He says he's not done. He's not finished what he started. And that's what's important.
So is all that's left at this point is just to figure out a time and place for the announcement?
Pretty much.
Pretty much. Allie Rafa outside the White House for us. Elaborate, if you will, Allie, on it. So we don't have an official announcement, obviously, from the White House or from the president himself, but Dr. Jill Biden, her saying pretty much that means he's going to go for it. What do you make of it? Can we basically take this to the bank?
Yeah, Yasmin, well, it's really no secret how much of an influence the First Lady is on the president. He likes to joke around about it pretty often, but it's absolutely true. So these comments she made today to the AP really made our ears perk up, because we know she's signaled this privately to Democrats in events like private fundraisers. But by far, this is the most public and direct she's been about this decision so far. So far, we know that this was likely already supposed to have happened. But remember, aides told us that the president didn't want to deliver his State of the Union speech as a presidential candidate. So then that decision was pushed back. Now it's looking like aides are saying that this decision of whether or not he's going to make this announcement for a re-election run in 2024 will likely come in April, right around the time we know that former President Obama made that decision. So Jill Biden definitely signaling something historic today, something that we hadn't heard up until this point, Yasmin.
We certainly, though, will be watching for that official announcement as well from the president himself. Allie Rafa for us. Thank you. All right, airline profits. They are soaring after huge losses brought on by travel restrictions during the pandemic. Look at this. Airline profit estimates for this year are at $4.7 billion. That is following 3 years of losses. Yes, profits are up, but at what expense to flyers, to you and me? Staffing shortages, weather. They have caused tens of thousands of last-minute flights cancellations, hours-long lines at airports, not to mention a slew of safety issues, which have caused a series of close calls on airport runways. Caleb Silver is here to break it all down for us. You take a look at these massive profits, Caleb, and I'm scratching my head because it is not fun to fly right now.
Yeah, much friendlier skies for the airlines, not so much for the passengers because of all the reasons you mentioned. Airlines are cutting routes. They're cutting staff. Obviously, they didn't staff up and up after the pandemic, and now they have a shortage of pilots. They have antiquated technology. All that has been super frustrating for flyers, but airlines are getting back to profitability after 3 terrible years. Remember, this is a very low-margin business, but when people want to travel, and we've been doing a lot of revenge traveling, they will fly and they will pay the cost.
Well, and that's the thing, and we'll bring this up for folks to see. I mean, we have to take into account what we've dealt with over the last 3 years, being inside this pandemic. A lot of folks not necessarily getting out there like they normally would. So now kind of the brakes are off. Everybody wants to get out there, see the world once again. They're flying at higher rates than they were last year. Airlines, though, have also subsequently raised prices as well. Is there any benefit, Caleb, at this point for passengers?
Not a lot. And airline prices, air travel is up 28% year over year. If you're looking at inflation, you're going to find it there in the airline industry as well for travelers. So not a lot of relief. And you can see they're cutting the peanuts, they're cutting the blankets, they're cutting the pillows unless you pay for them. Why? Because their margins are super tight, the airlines, and they have to return to profitability. And this is how they're doing it. They didn't staff up enough coming out of the pandemic. There's still a massive shortage of pilots, 8,000 pilots missing so far since the pandemic. We expect that number to triple in the next few years because there's not a lot of people coming into the industry.
I can't tell you the last time it was I got a pillow, by the way, Caleb. I don't know what you're talking about when it comes to pillows. Last time I saw a pillow was, I believe, 1989 or something. Last thing, and we're talking about some of these loans, right, that airlines have gotten during the pandemic. When you look at the benefits that they got this boost, are we seeing it on this side at all?
Not at all. They got the boost because they're considered kind of utilities, even though they're publicly held corporations. But who owns their stock? Biggest mutual funds in the world. We do as shareholders, but they can't change their business model because the margins are so thin, but they operate as utilities and they know when we want to travel, we're going to pay no matter what. So it's not so great for airline travelers. And you see the restrictions even on the elite passengers right now, getting into some of those clubs, getting seats on airplanes. It's tougher and tougher for passengers to get a better experience out of these airlines, even though they're doing much better financially.
I mean, that's the thing. Airlines have no incentive to offer up passengers anything because we continue to fly and we continue to buy the tickets because we want to see our friends, we want to see our family, we want to see the world once again after being, you know, stuck in our houses for so long. Caleb Silver, as always, good to talk to you. Thank you. Coming up, everybody, more than 2 weeks after that toxic train wreck in Ohio, some people who live there are now reporting health problems. We're going to talk to one doctor on the ground near East Palestine about what he is watching for next. Plus, University of Idaho officials are revealing what they plan to do with the house where 4 students were murdered. That is coming up in 5 things. Stay with us. All right, it is time to get to the backstory, our behind-the-scenes look at how a story comes together and how it fits into our bigger picture. This story is more than 2 decades in the making. It is about a man who spent more than nearly 24 years in prison for a murder that he insists he did not commit. And the NBC News investigative producer that he sent letters to in J.J. Velasquez's very first letter to producer Dan Slepian back in 2002, he told Slepian that he did not belong there and promised to get him all 2,000 pages of the transcripts of the trial that he says went wrong.
I understand that you have not made an actual commitment to my case, but the mere fact that you will actually read my transcripts and take my case into consideration requires my utmost appreciation.
So what happens next is all laid out in this new podcast from NBC News Studios, Letters from Sing Sing. The next episode is out on Monday, by the way, and Dan Slepian is joining us now. Walk me through this. So you get these letters.
All the time.
Back in 2002, though. Yeah. With this specific case,
yes,
you were skeptical.
I was skeptical.
And then?
Well, it's our job to be skeptical. And the reason that I really started focusing on JJ's case is because I really first couldn't believe he wrote the letter. It was as if it was written by a professor or a lawyer. I actually looked at the return address to make sure it had come from Sing Sing. But it was so meticulous and detailed and focused, and it just made me curious to know more about him, and it sucked me in. And what that did ultimately is led to a two-decade journey, and I didn't know that I would have a box of letters 20 years later in my office today.
There is this moment with this witness right? That's coming out in the next episode.
It's coming out on Monday. Episode 3 comes out on Monday morning. And there's this moment with this witness. I was skeptical of this case. I mean, police and prosecutors had said that 5 eyewitnesses had picked out JJ. And so it took me a while to really wrap my brain about how they could be wrong, until I actually went and spoke with the main eyewitness, who picked him out of 1,800 mugshots. Picked him out, later ended up recanted, saying he basically picked him out at random to me. And that's what I learned, and that's what the audience will learn the rest of my investigation in episode 3 on Monday.
Let's play a little bit of a preview of episode 3, and then we'll talk after it.
I don't know if he's the right guy or not. If he's the wrong guy, why him?
Yeah. So basically what happened is that this guy was the key eyewitness. He had 10 bags of heroin in his underwear when police picked him up 2 days after the murder. He had witnessed the murder, and he sat in the precinct for hours and hours, looked at 1,800 mugshots, and then said, "This is your guy." He said the shooter was a light-skinned black man with braids, and he picked out a man who is not black, a light-skinned Hispanic man who has never had braids. And when I spoke with him all those years later, he said he picked him out at random, basically.
How is that a reliable witness? You look at 1,800 mugshots and you pick one out of 1,800?
Well, that's a good reason to listen to the podcast. But
listen to the podcast, folks. Listen to the podcast.
But not only that, he didn't want to testify when the trial came around, and prosecutors had him jailed on what's called the material witness order for a week prior to the trial. And the day he testified, he was released and he was given some.
What's it like for JJ now, 24 years?
JJ, the president of the United States a few months ago apologized to JJ on behalf of society, but today he remains a convicted killer in the eyes of the law. He's not yet exonerated here in New York.
That's
but the Manhattan
incredible.
DA's office is looking at the case again, and I think that they hopefully will make an announcement soon.
More than 2 decades behind bars, that has got to change a man for something that he did not do. Dan Slepian, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Scan the QR code, everybody, now to listen to Letters from Sing Sing, now available wherever you get your podcasts. And obviously, episode number 3 seems very fascinating, so you don't want to miss that as well. When we come back, there is a new bill in Jackson, Mississippi that could majorly change the city's court system. Why some lawmakers say it looks like a modern-day Jim Crow. Coming up in tonight's Original. We'll be right back. Welcome back. NBC covers hundreds of stories each day, and because you could not possibly read, watch, or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment that we call The Local. From our Northeast Bureau, a shooting near a school in Philadelphia injured at least 7 people, including a 2-year-old girl. Officials saying all 7 victims were taken to the hospital and are currently in stable condition. Police are searching for the suspects. Out of our South Bureau, a teenager who went missing in North Carolina is back home today. Thanks to a drone, the boy got lost in a heavily wooded area where ground crews could not find him. But a drone operator with thermal imaging spotted him, and rescuers were able to bring him home. And from our Midwest Bureau, a bear escaped his enclosure at the St. Louis Zoo. For the second time in a month, it prompted a lockdown that lasted about an hour. Zookeepers are not sure exactly how the bear broke through the steel mesh enclosure. It is supposed to withstand 450 pounds of force. He obviously figured out a way out. Now we want to bring you the original with in-depth reporting on a topic that we have been watching. Jackson, Mississippi, back in the spotlight. The state legislature at odds over a bill creating a separate court system in the capital city where court officials would be appointed by state officials instead of elected, and nearly a fourth of Jackson would be under state control. It is the most recent example in a long history of clashes between the city of Jackson and the state of Mississippi. What will the bill look like by the time it reaches the governor's desk? Zinkley Asamoah has the story.
A new Mississippi bill is fueling controversy and protest in the state's capital. The bill is aimed at crime, the state facing a higher homicide rate than any state in the country, according to 2020 CDC data, with Jackson's homicide rate increasing 66% from 2017 to 2020, according to policy group Empower Mississippi. On Thursday, controversial elements of the bill were scrapped in the state Senate, but tensions remain. State Democrats initially calling HB 1020 racist and unconstitutional. The original State House bill expands an 8.6 square mile district in Jackson known as the Capitol Complex Improvement District, or CCID, growing to over 26 square miles within the city. It also created a new court system in the district where officials would be permanently appointed by state officials and not elected by Jackson residents. And the bill moved jurisdiction from the city of Jackson's police department to the state's Capitol Police.
It's taking power away from Jackson residents, but it's really kind of creating a city within a city.
State Representative Ronnie Crudup Jr. adding the proposal may have had to do with race.
Jackson's 85% black, but a lot of our more affluent and white residents were included in this expansion of the CCID.
The House bill's author, Representative John Thomas Trey Lamar, denies allegations redistricting was due to race.
All I'm interested in is helping make the capital city of the state of Mississippi safer. That's it.
The House bill now amended in the Senate by State Senator Bryce Wiggins.
Nobody, white, black, green, or blue, will tell you there's not a crime problem in Jackson. We've got to get a hand. They and us have got to get a handle on it.
His updated bill reverses the district expansion, eliminates the proposed new court system, and requires state and city police to reach an understanding together or go back to the drawing board.
Capitol Police have always had jurisdiction over the state capitol. What the Senate bill does is extend jurisdiction of the Capitol Police Department to all of the city of Jackson, and to work with via a memorandum with the Jackson Police Department to figure out the nuances and how that works.
If the bill passes, Wiggins says the state House and Senate must come to an agreement before it reaches the governor's desk. Zincle Asamoah, NBC News.
All right, still to come. The Oscars don't want any more drama like last year's slap incident. What they're going to do to make sure they're ready for a potential crisis at this year's ceremony. That conversation is coming up next. All right, welcome back. So for the first time in the awards history, the Oscars will have something they're calling a crisis team. Why, you ask? I think you can probably guess. You remember this moment, right? When Will Smith went on stage, slapped Chris Rock across the face. Still gives me the shakes. After he made a joke about Smith's wife's shaved head. Will Smith then later apologized. As you can imagine, the Academy does not want that to happen again. So they are putting extra precautions in place. Even the decision to pick Jimmy Kimmel as host was part of their considerations with all of this. The Academy CEO telling Time magazine, quote this, "You want someone like Jimmy on stage who is used to dealing with live TV. Things don't always go as planned. So you have to have a host in place who can really pivot and manage those moments." Want to bring in Bravo personality Darren Karp to talk more about this. So a crisis team, right?
Yes.
I mean, is this actually ever going to happen again? I wonder, after something like that went down. But what exactly would a crisis team do?
They're there. They've run a number of scenarios. I mean, they're there really to issue a statement quickly and swiftly. You know, it took them quite a little bit for the Academy to respond back after the Will Smith slap. I think no one was prepared for that, of course. It was really an unprecedented event. So this crisis team is there in order to respond quickly, so that way the audience, the actors, everyone is sort of protected, and they know the Academy is on top of it with this.
So I feel like when I was a kid, people watched the Oscars like nobody else, right?
Yeah.
You settled in, you got your popcorn, whatever. You like graded how people looked. It was the Joan Rivers red carpet, everything. You look at viewership now, I think last year was the second worst viewed Oscars ever when it comes to ratings.
Yeah.
What are they doing to up the ante with that?
Well, for better or for worse, I think the slap is actually going to increase viewership this year because people now want to be witness to this. What is going to happen? What jokes are going to be made? But the Academy does promise that this year the awards will be a little bit more immersive. It's going to be more nominee focused. They're actually going to cover all disciplines of the film industry. So expect Jimmy Kimmel to have some good jokes about this. You know,
well, that's what I was wondering. Does he have guardrails, right? Because I wonder, like, how much they want to delve into this, like considering some of the things and the conversations that were happening around the slap.
They have to. I mean, because
Right.
we're all talking about it and we're all going to watch on bated breath to see what goes down.
Yeah.
They have to, even every award ceremony after the Oscars has sort of made light of this.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to dive too much. But, you know, hey, Cocaine Bear came out today. You never know. That bear could come on stage. They need a crisis team there.
Oh, my gosh. And who's a part of this crisis team? Have they trained? Do we know?
Unclear. I think
Is
it's
this
a lot
just
of
PR crisis
Yeah, it's a lot
people?
of because they're issuing statements. I don't think it's
Yeah.
like police on standby for anything like that. But they
Right.
have actually already been deployed with
Yeah.
Andrea Riseborough's nomination with To Leslie. They thought that all the actors kind of coming together to try and get her the award was against sort of this campaigning for Oscars, and they had a response 6 days later.
They're not thinking of having kind of Will Smith issue yet another statement at the
No.
Oscars or anything, or any appearance? No.
I highly doubt it. He's banned
Okay.
for 10 years.
10 years,
Yeah.
a decade. Wow. Darren, thank you. Good to talk to you. All right, that's a wrap for this hour, everybody. We're going to have more for you here on Monday, same time, same place. Coverage picks up right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.